What if I told you that there was once a show about football from 20 years ago that predicted CTE, dealt with closeted homosexuality, domestic violence, and the death of the modern running back, and so many of the things we know as a part of the ugly side of the NFL that was so good, it was canceled after one season? In 2003, ESPN, for reasons I really don't understand and can't fathom, decided they would try to make a gritty television drama out of the NFL with its show, Playmakers. This decision was incredibly weird and is still unprecedented because ESPN had no original drama on its channel at the time. It was really only a few years into being a huge player in the world of sports media. They were not yet the juggernaut they would eventually become, and I wonder if there's like an alternate universe where this show is successful and continues on, and then suddenly we get a lot more sports-based drama media, because like sports drama is really utilized in our American media, at least. I know that Ted Lasso show was popular with white people. I ain't never seen the shit.
You second guess more than a shitty psychic. The only African I know more imprisoned by their own thoughts is goddamn Nelson Mandela.
But like beyond that, there really should be so much more happening with the intersection of sports and like TV drama. There's so much to pull from there. I would literally murder someone to get a at least 10 episode mini series about the Monday Night Wars. Please, somebody, now that Vince McMahon is basically out the picture, can y'all license that? Like, what's going on? Anyway, out of nowhere, ESPN premieres this show and it's immediately a hit. The 90s were full of gritty looks in the world of football and just gritty drama in general. You have The Sopranos happening, Oz, NYPD Blue is big. And then you also have gritty football drama. Any Given Sunday is probably the closest thing to the show, and it came out in 1999. The movie The Program did a similar thing in 1993. This is also the era of NFL Blitz and Mutant League football, which I know only a handful of y'all are going to remember. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a clip. And this is not just a game, but also a cartoon.
And if Bones won't play for his Slay City Slayers, then KD Slayer will make sure that Razor doesn't play at all.
And then there's this horrifying scene from The Last Boy Scout, a truly 90s action movie. And I just have to show it to you because I can't describe it. So yeah, there is a tradition of taking the intrinsic drama and violence of football and saying, how fucked up does the world around this sport have to be really? All that inspirational Rudy shit, that's cute and all. Remember the Titans? That's nice. But what if a dude kept a blicky under his jockstrap and he really needed to score? Here's the problem. This show, Playmakers, was so good and so true to the behind the scenes issues of the NFL that it was hitting a little too close to home. It was low key maybe fucking up the bag for ESPN. The NFL was keenly aware of the type of imagery that this show was putting on display, and that this was not as fantasy as they would have liked the public to believe. In terms of big evil media corporations who exploit their labor, it doesn't get too much worse than NFL, and for decades they've been running their league like a carnival zoo, allowing players to both get bludgeoned and brutalized on the field by the sport, but also to bludgeon and brutalize people off the field in the name of the sport. It's just that we weren't in the information age yet, so a lot of those things that were happening were much easier to hide. For example, in 2000, only a couple of years before this show existed, legendary linebacker who won 2 Super Bowls, Ray Lewis, after only his first year in the league at the time, was charged with murder, accused of stabbing to death a man here in my hometown of Atlanta. This actually had ridiculous ramifications for Atlanta nightlife. Everybody in Atlanta knows that the city changed after Ray Lewis got off. In 2006, only a few years after this, quarterback Ben Roethlisberger would have the first of 2 sexual assault cases levied against him in his early career. A year later, quarterback Michael Vick, an NFL megastar at the time, who had a character loosely based on him in the show Playmakers, was arrested on suspicion of running an illegal dogfighting ring, which eventually sent him to jail for a year. And this is in between what seemed like countless incidents of domestic violence that would pop up regularly, a little bit of a steroid scandal, and infamously the Ray Rice assault case in 2013 that was caught on camera. On top of that, there were constantly stories about fights and scuffles at the club between, maybe drunken fans and haters and NFL players who didn't know how to, stay out of trouble. Most significantly from this era, I remember the murder of Darren Williams, a young cornerback from the Denver Broncos who was shot after an altercation at a club. But more than all of this really ugly stuff is the uglier reality that was only alluded to in the show, but served to be probably its most prescient storyline, the ongoing issue with football and CTE. One of the characters, a linebacker named Olsik, sorry, Polish people, shout out to Polish people, shout out to Chicago, we won this week, shout out looking up that name though. This character suffers from headaches and just general erratic behavior and feeling like something's wrong with him as he contemplates his future in the league. And this predates but echoes experiences from players like Dan Morgan, Luke Kuechly, and probably most notably Chris Borland, a linebacker who had a Pro Bowl season in his rookie year with the San Francisco 49ers and then retired that same year before he could ever really cash in on his success in the NFL, only because he feared his mental health. Of all the problems that the NFL has on its record, I think that CTE was probably the most concerning even back then, because players were having severe mental health issues after their playing days were over, and we would see a slew of players die, mostly by their own hands, for the next decade, as well as lawsuits that would be levied against the league for better medical care for players after their playing days were over, as well as a greater focus on player safety. So all of this stuff was on display in this show. The NFL fully understood that it had them dead to rights. In fact, this show was mild compared to what was really going on in the NFL at the time. It was clearly written by people who had insider knowledge and a full understanding of how dirty the game really was. We just didn't realize it yet. So what do you think the response to the show was from the NFL? Did they get proactive and clean up the league from drugs and get players social and medical support to keep them healthy and out of trouble? Maybe even help players like manage their money better and give them therapy so that they don't just feel like jocks and bucks being strewn out there to be gladiators, to be chewed up and spit out by the league? No. They got the show canceled after only one season. The NFL's then commissioner, Paul Tagliabue, made some statements and likely a few phone calls calling the show a gross mischaracterization of our sport. Not even hiding it, the NFL, who gave the very lucrative rights to Sunday Night Football games to ESPN at the time, was not happy and did not want that show to continue, even though the show was the second highest rated thing on ESPN in that year, only behind Sunday Night Football. ESPN understood that, yeah, they could take this different route with original content, but they would lose these surefire big bucks that was the NFL game licensing rights, and it would just not be worth it for them in the long run, so they capitulated. And unlike today, where shows can be shopped around to 500 different streaming services and get bought up again, the show never got a second life. This was the end of Playmakers. The closest thing we got to it not long after that was the BET sitcom The Game, which I really didn't watch. This is a light work, so I didn't take time to go back and watch the series. I remember it being a bit over the top and like ultra gritty, as a lot of things were in the early 2000s and late 90s. Like, it probably feels like what the Entourage must feel like to people today. Do y'all remember Entourage? Do y'all want to remember Entourage? Moving on. But ever since then, the NFL has been much more rigid in the policing of its product. Not long after this, we get the exclusive licensing to EA Sports for Madden, allowing the NFL to have complete control over that franchise. And if you know how that's affected that video game. We see future NFL shows and movies that use their likeness to be much, much more rigid to how the NFL is allowed to be depicted. Like HBO Ballers has a little bit of an edge, but it's much, much milder than Playmakers. Even the supposed dramatic telling of the NFL's history of hiding CTE concussion, starring Will Smith with a fucked up Nigerian accent.
By my calculations,
this was incredibly watered down and had a lot of good people on both sides type energy to help the NFL save face. The NFL has been and probably will always be a big, powerful, and ruthless media corporation that does not want anything to tarnish their brand, even if it's things that are really, really good. But they can't stop me. Actually, that's not true. They most definitely can stop me. They have on multiple occasions already. One of my favorite videos from last year is a video I did on how racism and capitalism killed the NFL running back. It features former NFL players Aaron Foster and Aaron Maven as they talk about their experiences in the league and how the NFL exploits its players. It's one of my better videos, even though some of the takes didn't age as well as I wish they would have. Who knew that Kyron Williams was going to be a top 5 running back last year? Don't act like you did. I didn't, but it is what it is. The video bombed out the gate for a couple of reasons. Number one, my sports videos, like my YouTube audience, does not watch sports. And that's fine. I understand. I'm trying to grow that organically. I'm going to take those L's. This video is not going to do nearly as good as my video about Drake or anything else, but it is what it is. But the other reason it didn't do well is because it's kind of ugly at parts. Like, there's so many clips that I had to use ugly blurring effects to cover up NFL licensed media because the NFL is super strict about their media when it comes to fair use, in that they're really just not fair with the use. The only way you'll be able to see that video in its original format without these big, ugly gray blocks is on my streaming service, Nebula. For those who don't know, Nebula is the independent streaming service created by YouTubers like me to be a home away from the draconian laws and restrictions of YouTube. At least that used to be our thing. Things are changing at Nebula. For the longest, Nebula was greatly for finding uncut content from YouTube's best talents without weird comment sections, dislike bars, ad breaks like this, and without computer-controlled algorithms deciding what you watch. Further, you're also still getting content that had to be taken down from YouTube. For example, my video on the masculinity of Tupac, as well as uncut extended versions of other videos. But now Nebula has been expanding more and more into original content. For example, the travel reality show The Getaway, featuring Foreign Man in a Foreign Land and Patch from Tears Zoo, we turned the typical elimination reality show concept on its head by secretly telling all 6 contestants that they're a mole and allowing chaos to ensue. But things can still get more weird and surreal, such as in Jesse Gender's sci-fi film Identitize or Patrick Williams' The Night of the Coconut. Yes, with your help and support over these years, Nebula has begun to evolve from just a place where good YouTubers make really good content to legit and independent media studio. And yes, we are independent. We aren't owned by Google. We don't have any major buy-ins from any other major media entities. We are not running on any machine learning AI to decide what content gets shown. This is all by creators, for creators like me, benefiting creators like me. And this is why we have these ad reads to bring it directly to you, because you make this possible. You can be a part of this by using my promo code FDSignifier to sign up for a full year of Nebula for 40% off, or just follow the link in the description and you'll be supporting the growth of not just my channel, but of creators like me to continue to go beyond the limitations of YouTube and modern media as a whole. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you to Nebula for sponsoring this video. I'm FD Signifier, and this has been Lightwork.